Welcome back to Love X Revenge, the place where love meets destiny, betrayal meets courage, and every story leaves a scar on the heart. The wind screamed across the canyon as if it knew what was about to happen. Elena stood at the edge of the cliff, her hands trembling, her dress torn by rough hands that had dragged her here against her will. Below her, the valley stretched endlessly, dark and merciless, with jagged rocks waiting like silent beasts. Behind her stood the mayor of the town, Victor Hale, a man feared by everyone and respected by none. His expensive coat fluttered in the wind, his eyes cold and calculating. "You should have said yes," he said calmly, as if he were talking about the weather. "No one refuses me." Elena turned slowly. She was only 18, but her eyes carried a strength that no one in the town had ever dared to show him. "I would rather die than belong to you," she said, her voice shaking but not breaking. Victor smiled. Not with anger, not with rage, with satisfaction. "So be it." His men stepped forward. A moment later, Elena felt hands pushing her back. The world tilted. The sky disappeared, and she fell. The fall felt endless. The air tore through her lungs, her scream swallowed by the canyon's echo. Her body struck a slope, rolled over sharp stones, branches ripping her skin, pain exploding through her bones. Then darkness came. Hours passed. The night wrapped the mountains in silence. Somewhere in the wilderness, hooves moved softly over the earth. A lone Apache warrior rode through the canyon, guided not by roads but by instinct. His name was Kale. He had lived his life between shadows and storms, a man shaped by loss and solitude. The townspeople called him savage, dangerous, unwanted. They never knew his story, never cared to ask. Kale stopped his horse suddenly. The wind carried something strange. Not the scent of animals. Not the sound of predators. It was something else. A faint breath. He dismounted and followed the sound, moving silently through the rocks. Moonlight revealed a fragile body lying among broken stones. A girl. Blood stained her dress. Her face was pale, her lips barely moving. Kale knelt beside her. For a moment, he thought she was already gone. Then her fingers twitched. She was alive. Carefully, he lifted her into his arms. She was light, too light, as if life had already begun to leave her. He carried her to his hidden camp deep in the forest, far from the town that had abandoned her. For 2 days, Elena hovered between life and death. Kale cleaned her wounds, wrapped her injuries, and stayed beside her in silence. He had no medicine from hospitals, no doctors, only knowledge passed down through generations. On the 3rd morning, Elena opened her eyes. She saw firelight. She saw unfamiliar wooden walls. And then she saw him. A tall man with dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that seemed to carry storms inside them. Fear flashed across her face. Kale stepped back slowly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe," he said quietly. His voice was low, calm, unlike any voice she had ever heard. Elena tried to sit up but winced in pain. "Don't move," Kale said. "Your body is broken, but your spirit isn't." She stared at him, confused. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Someone who found you before death did." Tears filled her eyes. Memories rushed back. The mayor, the cliff, the fall. Her hands clenched the blanket. "They tried to kill me," she said. Kale nodded. "I know." Days passed. Elena slowly regained strength. Kale rarely spoke, but he was always there, bringing water, cooking simple food, fixing her bandages. He never touched her without permission. Never asked questions she wasn't ready to answer. For the first time in her life, Elena felt something she had never known before: safety. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, she finally told him everything. How Victor Hale had watched her for months. How he had offered money to her family. How he had promised power and luxury if she agreed to become his. How she had refused. And how he had punished her for it. Kale listened without interrupting. When she finished, silence filled the air. Then his eyes hardened. "In my people's law," he said, "a man who abuses his power loses the right to lead." Elena looked at him. "But in this town," she whispered, "he is untouchable." Kale stood up slowly. "Not anymore." The town woke up one morning to something unusual. Whispers, rumors. People said they had seen a shadow moving through the streets at night. Someone had broken into the mayor's warehouse. Someone had burned documents. Someone had left symbols carved into wooden doors, symbols that no one understood, but everyone feared. Victor Hale laughed at first. Scare tactics, he said to his men. But his laughter faded when he started receiving messages. Not letters, not threats, proof. Proof of his crimes, proof of his corruption, proof of his secrets. And then, one night, he saw her. Elena stood across the street, alive. Victor froze. Impossible. He had watched her fall. He had seen her disappear. But there she was. Her eyes met his. And for the first time in his life, Victor Hale felt fear. Behind her, in the shadows, stood Cale. His presence was silent, but powerful. The town began to change. People who had once bowed their heads started speaking. Workers revealed how the mayor had stolen their land. Families told stories of intimidation and threats. Women came forward with tears and trembling voices. Victor tried to fight back. He hired more men. He tried to silence witnesses. But it was too late. Elena had become a symbol. Not of weakness, but of survival. One night, Victor confronted her himself. He found her near the old bridge, where the river roared beneath the moonlight. You should have stayed dead, he said. Elena didn't step back. I already died once, she replied. You can't kill someone who has nothing left to lose. Victor reached for his weapon. Before he could move, a hand grabbed his wrist. Cale stepped forward. His eyes were calm, too calm. Your power ends tonight, Cale said. Victor laughed nervously. You think a savage like you can touch me? The law is on my side. Cale released his wrist slowly. The law of your town, he said. Not the law of truth. The next morning, the town gathered in the square. Police cars arrived. Journalists followed. Victor Hale was arrested in front of everyone. His empire collapsed in a single day. As he was taken away, his eyes searched for Elena. She stood among the crowd, her posture straight, her face calm. He realized something too late. He had tried to destroy her. But he had created something far more dangerous. A woman who refused to break. Weeks later, the town felt different. The air felt lighter. The people walked differently. Elena stood on the hill where her life had almost ended. Cale stood beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. Why did you save me? She finally asked. Cale looked at the horizon. Because I know what it feels like, he said quietly, to be thrown away by the world. Elena turned to him. And now? She asked. Cale met her eyes. Now, he said, you decide who you want to become. Elena looked at the sky. She was no longer the frightened girl at the edge of a cliff. She was someone who had faced death and returned. She was someone who had found strength in pain. And beside her stood a warrior who had taught her that revenge was not just about destroying enemies. It was about reclaiming your own soul. As the wind rose again, Elena smiled. Softly. This time, the cliff was no longer a place of fear. It was a reminder. She had fallen. She had survived. And she had risen, stronger than ever. If you felt the power of this story, stay with Love X Revenge, where love and revenge collide, and every heart has a story worth fighting for.